Hello everyone, welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I'm here with Margaret, who's here as our extra expert broadcast engineer. And I am Richard. I'm the guy here who's trying to maintain civility while my engineers do stupid things. In fact, I remember Bill telling me stories about some of the stuff at some of his other jobs where people doing stupid things with firearms. Very exciting. So that's some fun storytelling there. I'm having a beer during the session. By the way, my weekend has already started. That is from Ruben. Awesome, Ruben. I'm glad you're here. I want to welcome everyone to fmtraining.tv, where every day we're doing great FileMaker training. We're training you. A lot of times you're inspiring and training us. In fact, those of you who are so amazingly special, we may call you on the AT&T hotline and say, hey, would you like to broadcast and show us what you've got? Upcoming broadcast schedule. Today is going to be day 2 of Authorizenet with Bill. Bill is awesome. He's a senior developer here at RC Consulting. If you need credit card assistance, credit card processing, credit card shenanigans at all, what you need to do is reach out to us at support@RC Consulting, and we can help you with that if you need it. Otherwise, you can watch what we're doing today and learn and do it yourself. I think the goal today is to educate the people who want to be educated, and if you realize this is a little on the too deep side, then give us a call and we can help you with that. Bill's going to wrap stuff up with some follow-up on Monday, so if you have questions about today and if we don't get to it today, bring it back on Monday. Tuesday, Colossal Event's going to be talking about the latest updates with the SSL certificates and the FileMaker platform. That's good content. And then, of course, Thursday, we got Watson coming back. That'll be back. And then we have a special episode of Stump the Monkey on Friday. So Christian Schmidt decided he's going to come back and give us a Stump the Monkey episode where he'll talk about the latest stuff he's been building in the Monkey Bread plugin. And you need to ask questions about how you can... if you have something you can't solve, you don't know how to solve it, we're going to throw it out there. We're going to see if we can stump Christian Schmidt. Because every time we talk to him, he's got 6,581 custom, special features that the plugin can do that you can't do in FileMaker without his plugin. And so very exciting on that end of stuff. So as a reminder, if you go to fmtraining.tv up here at the top, it's a really nice, wonderful website. You come down here, press the live button. You can see the upcoming broadcast schedule. Come over here to the bundles. We highly ask you to support the channel and purchase the on-demand training. Whereas this is kind of this crazy, kind of spastic explosion kind of conversation. You never know what's going to happen here. Ellen, the lobster, could show up and start putting not safe for work memes on the live stream. If you want to not have those shenanigans in your training, you want just a very calm, excitable but calm Richard with animations, then you want to check out our training down here. So go to fmtraining.tv, hit the bundle button, and this is where you buy it. We don't really sell the courses individually anymore. There's just too many courses. And I think we're going to be starting the FileMaker 20 courses here fairly soon if we can get some more guidance from Claris on that. So anyway, these are the buttons right here, and these are annual subscriptions. We highly recommend you check it out. So I want to remind everyone that we are broadcasting in high definition on Twitch, Discord, and YouTube. I want to welcome Drew, Fox, Jack, Gadidi, obviously Jake. It's kind of a light crew today, but today is Authorizenet. Some people were asking, they can't make it live, but they're watching the recordings, Bill. So I've actually had several people asking about, hey, how do I learn about Authorizenet and all that in the last day? And they were like, where's the recording? I said, well, we're shooting it today, therefore there's no recording yet. And then the recording, if you want to watch it, because you can't make the live event, you can, about 48 business hours, the recording gets posted. So, Bill, are you there?
I am here.
Bill is awesome. Bill was very entertaining. We like Bill. Bring up Bill. All right, so Bill is here at Authorize.net. So let me do this. Last time on Battlestar Galactica, we were talking about PCI regulatory processes and the things that you need to do to secure your system before you start processing credit cards. And then fast forward to today, we're actually talking about the mechanical process of running money, right, Bill? Is that what we're doing
Correct.
today?
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to go full spew on Bill. So there we are, Bill. We're on there. And then I'm going to bring up the Discord conversation on the side so you folks can see that a little bit. So if you say something really questionable, everyone will see it. So go ahead, Bill. You're up the bat. Go, baby.
Okay, so just as a disclaimer, I put my mute control for my headset in a desk drawer, so I actually will stay connected to you this time. So, that was fun, though. Nobody bothered me while I was talking.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's why I like it.
At some point, he'll get lonely and he'll want to know why no one's talking to him.
Yeah, did they just turn me off, and here I am blabbing? Okay, so as Richard said, we are covering Authorize.net today. But as a preface to that, I want to make sure that everybody knows there are numerous options for how to run credit cards from within a FileMaker solution. As somebody from the last video during PCI compliance, they said that they created custom functions using JavaScript to execute the credit card transactions, and that is certainly a doable way. You can do the organic post calls through insert from URL if you wanted to go that route, though I don't recommend it. And that's why we're doing Authorize.net. And the reason I say I don't recommend it is because most of us work on a money for time basis when we're developing, whether it's for ourselves or for a third party. And it's unnecessary work when you can spend a little bit of money and get a plugin to do all that heavy coding for you. And here at RC Consulting, we are really big on the 360 Works series of plugins. And so the one that we're going to be talking about today, of course, is Plastic, and we'll get to that. We've got them queued up right over here. We're going to be yapping about those guys. And the gateway that we're going to talk about is Authorize.net. So let's talk very briefly about what Authorize is and why it's important. I called Authorize.net a gateway. It's not a merchant account. And from our last video on PCI compliance, you would have learned a merchant account is the account you have with a bank, whether it's your main bank or another bank, that actually executes transactions and grabs somebody's Visa money and puts it in your bank account. And the PCI compliance is the rules that pertain to that. Authorize.net, however, simply provides an interface for your web applications, whether it's FileMaker or a PHP website or whatever. It provides an interface to get an authorization and a capture code to send to your merchant account. And the reason they do this is because otherwise every single merchant account provider would have to have their own internet gateway.
Question.
Yo, what's up?
So what is it? So it's they're interfacing between FileMaker and the actual credit card company, like Visa, MasterCard. Is that what they're doing?
Sort of. So it would be interfacing from the internet to your merchant account by contacting the card issuer, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, for you.
Oh. So it's like a three-way chat then, kind of.
Yeah, like a middleman. And for that function and for the cost of maintaining the platform and the security and everything, they get paid a small amount of money for each transaction. So Authorize.net is the one that we chose for this simply because it's the one that I have the most direct experience with. It's one of the heavy hitters in the industry. But there's some other ones, and we'll touch briefly on them in case you want to use one of them. To do this, to execute credit card transactions through a FileMaker solution using this method, you need the 360 Works Plastic plugin. So let's take a quick look at that. Go to the 360 Works website, go over here to Products, and then hit Plastic, and it will take you to the Plastic page. You download it over here on the right. Make sure you keep your versions current because Jesse and his crew over there keep their software up to date with changes in OS and security and everything else that goes into executing these transactions. So always run the most up-to-date version. Otherwise, all of a sudden, your stuff will break and you won't know why. Then you want to go to the documentation page and you want to learn to love this. Now let's scoot down here. We have Plastic 3 Authorization Basics, and it shows you all these different gateways. So Authorize.net, of course, is the one we're going to use, but these are some of the other ones that you can use with the 360 Works plugin. So if you happen to use Trans first, you're covered, so on and so forth. The mechanics of doing with this is essentially the same with some minor details covered in the documentation. You can see here, each of these different gateways has its own subsection of the documentation, so you'll use the appropriate section for your own application. For us, we're going to use the Authorize.net section, and we have all this good stuff that we get to print off and memorize. All right, and we're going to come back to this. So back to Authorize.net. Authorize.net, you have to set up just like you would a merchant account. It's a painless 10-minute procedure. And they basically take their pay out of the amounts of transactions that you submit to them. So it's not like you're writing them a check every month. It's a really, really easy way to do it. A couple things just to cover that are really important to be able to use Authorize.net is seeing your transactions. Now, this is a live Authorize.net account. One of my customers gave me permission to use it for this demo. There's no top secret anything in this. So it's really a nice thing. I want to thank Brian Brogan for his help with that. And so let's look at the transactions he has in here today. So these are transactions from his web store. And you're going to actually see the web store in Monday's video because it was a cool WebDirect integration. But more on that later. And you can see that, you get your transaction ID, the status. It might say voided. It might say captured or captured pending settlement. That means all this money is going to go into your bank account. Kind of card, the last four of the card number. Remember from our PCI lecture, you cannot store the entire card number. Well, Authorize.net does it correctly. They only show you the last four, the amount, when it settles, et cetera, and the dollar. And then you can go into the individual transactions and get some more info. Now, the parameters that we send when we execute an Authorize.net transaction can fill in all this stuff, all your customer data, your invoice numbers, everything. Or you can do a bare bones integration where you're just getting the money. And that's the developer's choice. Another section of Authorize.net is going to be the Customer Information Manager. The Customer Information Manager is how we make payment profiles. So these are real people who have their real credit card stored for use by my customer's business. So each time they come back, he can hit this profile and execute credit card charges. And they can also manage it from the web integration that we did. So they can delete it or change the card or that type of thing. And this makes remembering somebody's card PCI compliant, because the only thing that you get, as we'll talk about in detail, are these profile IDs back. There's no relation to any individual with the number or any card. It's completely random. So that's kind of it for the overview. You can get on Authorize.net and play with all this stuff yourself. But I wanted you to understand the basics so that as I'm going through the how-to, it'll ring a bell, okay? So we're going to go ahead and shut this off because we aren't going to be coming back. I do recommend that you print the Authorize.net or whatever gateways documentation that you use, because you refer back to it again and again and again, even when you're used to doing these transactions. I mean, there's a lot of detail that you have to follow up on. Okay.
So what we're doing is we're giving them the public file bill, right? And then Margaret, did that get branded as appropriate? I hope yes.
I handed it to Michael, so I assume yes.
Okay, and then you have it back from Michael. So yeah, we're going to check it real quick. They will get the link here to the public file here shortly. You should point out the difference between your file and the public one you're getting.
Yep, will do. Cool. All right. Well, you don't need the file to enjoy this awesome presentation, but when it's all said and done, you're going to want it so you can play with it too. And as a bonus, you're getting the bare bones exact scripts that I use when I do these integrations. So it's basically an all-in-one kit. So as you can see, I brought up my demo file on the screen here. When you open the file, you'll go to Settings. So main menu, Settings down here at the right. All this stuff is fake. So don't try to use these credentials. They won't work. But I'm not giving you my actual login keys on the internet. Sorry. But you'll have to get your plugin license key and the register too. That's what 360works sends you. And then you have to get your Authorize.net login and transaction key. So think of it as your API keys here. Okay, these are just fake. So once those are filled in, we can start playing with this. So a real quick review of PCI before we get into it. PCI compliance is covered in detail ad nauseum in the what was it, the Tuesday video or the Monday video this week. And if you haven't seen it, take 20 minutes, watch it on double speed. You'll get a couple laughs, particularly when I ignore Richard for 10 minutes. And you'll learn all about the boring part of keeping legal with credit card numbers. The short version, don't store card numbers or card holder data, and it can't get stolen from you. Okay, So how does credit card authorizations work? Your FileMaker solution is going to send a request to Authorize.net via the plugin that sends it a bunch of information. The Authorize.net is going to talk to Visa or Discover or whoever issued the card and say, hey, does this guy have this amount of money? And if the answer is yes, Authorize sends you back an approval and later settles that transaction to your merchant account. If they say no, it sends you back a decline or another kind of error. That's the process at the 10,000 foot level. So let's get into how we actually do this. So let's open up the script space. So when we do this, we do it modularly. So these scripts each can be used by themselves in pretty much any solution, provided the underlying fields are appropriately named. Okay. So let's get into two scripts you should have. I call them the Authorize.net scripts. So the first is acquire Authorize.net credentials. This is where you're programmatically grabbing your API keys for Authorize.net. I use an execute SQL transaction to do it. So you can see this doesn't really look like your normal execute SQL. So let me show you what bonus number 2 is. Bonus number 2 is some custom functions that I use, and I think at least one of them was made by an RCC engineer. Sorry, I can't read and talk at the same time. And that is parse field name. So parse field name basically grabs the database table name or field name out of your calculation and substitutes it into execute SQL properly. It's cool. And then you get the assign functions with it. Assign basically is an easy way to pass parameters. You can pass parameters using let notation or any one of 200 different methods. I like this method because it's fast, so I included this here. And then UUID decimal just makes a random decimal number that I use in primary keys. So there's going to be 2 tables. The first table is preferences, or whatever you call your settings table. Preferences, I have my Authorize.net and plugin keys. That's all I have in it for this solution because it's a simple demo file. And then you have your transactions, and this might be your orders table or your payments table in a production solution. The short version is this is where we execute the credit card transaction and store the authorization or declination or whatever. And you can see the fields there. Nothing crazy yet. So the first script, we have grab the Authorize.net credentials. So we go to our preferences table using execute SQL and we get them. We parse them in lines 19 and 20 and we return them here. This is how you use assign notation. You put your pound sign and then what you want your resultant variable to be called and what you want to assign to that variable. And you just string them together. A lot of people like to put them up and down like that. That's fine. The next one is the register plastic plugin. At least once per client session, you need to register the plastic plugin. And this is an operation that calls out to 360 Works and says, hey, is this thing legal or is it pirated from some Bolivian porn site? No, it's legal. And I like to do this every time I run a transaction. And I have no factual proof of this, but I believe that FileMaker loses its mind every once in a while and forgets that the plugin's registered. And so I just don't like having processes fail or calls for support because of that. So I run this every single time I execute a transaction. It takes a half a second. So
by
it's
the way,
I
I like the line. We're going to have to write that down. I have no proof of this, but I'm pretty sure that periodically FileMaker loses its mind. Another shirt. I feel a shirt coming on.
Well, that's actually a book title I've been working on.
Not a shirt, it's a book.
It's a 7-volume set, all the ways that FileMaker loses its mind. But so anyway,
oh man,
let's talk about how we do the scripting for this. The first line, set variable. Well, we have our obligatory allow user abort set error capture. This is important. You want these, of course, to keep your error dialogues from popping and such, but you also are going to suppress the plugin errors separately because this will not do it. Ask me how I know. Anyway, then we have to assign our parameters. So this script step uses the pound assign custom function to turn whatever we pass into it via assign notation into variables. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, debug this when you get your sample file and look at the data viewer and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so the next line is set variable no errors. And this is important because, as I said, set error capture does not suppress plugin errors, because plugin errors, I think, are some kind of JavaScript error, not a FileMaker error. So you use CC set error capture true, and this keeps the plugin errors from popping up and stopping your scripts. And this is really important if you use this in like a robot process, like if you have a customer that's doing monthly payments or something, and you run it at 4 in the morning and it does 800 of them, you don't want one of these dialogues popping because it'll stop running. Again, ask me how I know. So it's the best way to learn. So this is essentially the same thing we do for grabbing Authorize.net credentials. We're just grabbing our plastic credentials, except for this, we're substituting the 360works plugin registered to and plugin plastic key, and we're grabbing them with execute SQL. We parse them in lines 22 and 23, and then we do CC register, and we pass the plastic license key and the plastic registered to into the plugin. The plugin calls 360, says, hey, is this thing good? And it returns a 1 if good, otherwise an error. And we exit with the result of assigning register the variable register. Oops. Didn't Control A. All right, so let's get into how to do basic credit card charges. When I say a basic credit card charge, this is where you have some kind of transaction, you're going to do it once, and it's never going to happen again. So think a cash register, right? Make this a little bigger if I can. Where's the thing? Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yeah, I'm doing a little zooming over here. So the zooming in and out is Richard trying to play a camera guy. So yes, I'm helping.
Hopefully nobody's getting motion sick.
Yeah, if they throw up, let me know and I will stop doing that.
Okay. So this script runs in test mode. So when you get your file, your sample file, you need to comment out or delete the test mode variable. You'll see it if you want to run live transactions. So right now, if you pass in the appropriate stuff, it'll come back with an authorize even though no transaction is being done. All right. So assumptions, let's talk about that. These are the variables that you want to pass in. And so amount, that one's pretty obvious. The credit card number, expiration month and year, and then a CVC code. And I got this out of order. CVC is down here. Sorry about that. The rest of the stuff, first name, last name, charge description, ID contact, address, etc., those are optional. And that's how you fill out the rest of the transaction details. So if you want to have Authorize.net keep that for you in a transaction record, pass them as parameters as well. But otherwise, we're just going to do the credit card. All right. So the first couple of these. Again, set error capture, allow user abort, and we parse our parameters. So now all these are in variables in the script because of this line right here. So we're going to check for required number, or excuse me, required data. And I wrote this using a layout. So it's actually looking at some fields rather than variables. You need all these things to execute a transaction. So you need an error trap in case you don't have them. You don't want to try to execute and get a decline. So if it's not there, it errors and exits. Grab your Authorize.net credentials. So we're just performing that script I showed you, and then we're setting the variable to get the credentials in variable form in this script. This is the power of the assign notation. It's awesome. Now we're going to mute 360 errors. So I say no errors, CC set error capture true. Check for Authorize.net credentials. Do I really have my authorization key and my login ID? If I don't, I can't do this. So I error and exit. This is all boilerplate stuff. Nothing should be real surprising yet. And then we have register 360works plugin. So I fire that other script I showed you, and I register the variable return, and it should be a 1. So I say, is plastic test true? And if it's true, it'll return true. If it's not, it errors an exit. Again, not rocket science. So now we get to the meat and potatoes of this. Again, if you want to run live transactions, you have to comment out this line. It's line 57. It might be slightly different in the file that Richard's sending because I made some last minute changes, but it should be right in this neighborhood. So you just comment it out like this, or you can delete it altogether, your choice. CC set gateway. This is telling the plugin, hey, we're going to use Authorize.net. So you can see that like all these plastic functions for the plugin, they start with CC. So you can do like a CC set, and it just brings them up in the list just like they would any native FileMaker function. All right, the next one, we're actually going to execute the transaction. So I'm going to blow this one up. So it's CC process payment is the function. The required parameters are right here. So let's go through these. Obviously, we have our login and key for Authorize.net. I always do a get as number amount because I want to make sure that I'm passing this in the proper form. FileMaker, for whatever reason, sometimes screws up the type of variable that you're dealing with. In this call, it probably wouldn't matter because the plugin is actually doing the post, but I'm in a habit of just being really type specific in FileMaker anymore.
Okay, so real quick on a backstory on that for those of you wondering about this. So Bill, it's not one of those things where Bill suspects it's going to lose its mind. FileMaker, when it creates variables, we've talked about this not too often on the live stream, but it's what they call casting. So when you define a field in the FileMaker platform, very important. Unless you're like Kyle, everyone else should be listening to me except Kyle. Kyle doesn't have to listen to me. When you define a field in FileMaker, you tell it the kind of field you're defining. Your number field, text field, date field, timestamp, whatever. When you define a variable, when Claris was building the variable system, there was a conversation about, well, shouldn't we have it tell it when you define a variable the type it is? You can see where like, how come that's not there, right? And what Claris did and Clay did and these folks at Claris did is it makes a best guess based upon the data you're shooting into it. Right? And as a result of that, sometimes it can get it wrong if you send it something that looks like text, but it's actually a number, or it's a number and you actually meant it to be text. And so what can happen is that then you define it early on, it gets miscast. You can't even see the casting on it. It's kind of invisible. But then later on, you're doing some math and suddenly you're wondering why two variables can't be added together numerically in a normal sort of rational way. And that's because FileMaker somehow decided one of them's a date or it's a text field or something else. So we're forcing what we call casting. It's like a cast of like a metal cask or iron, some sand thing, and you pour the liquid metal in there and it turns into a mold, right? We're forcing it to cast in a certain way, in this case, a number field. So I don't want to take too much from that, Bill. It gives you, whenever I do this, it's kind of a secret. So no one listen to what I'm saying. This is a secret moment for Bill to take a drink, right? And get caught up and cough and stuff, and that way he doesn't have to, right? So anyway, there we go.
There's some truth there.
There's some truth there. All right. So, and he's already, I mean, he may not be drinking, but some of you already hitting the bottle pretty early on Friday. So, all right. So where are we at? So we cast it. We cast it, right? So we cast there. Okay. Then what happens?
Now we're up to the credit card number. And I always throw that in a filter transaction simply because, or a calculation, not a transaction, because you never know if somebody has fat fingers and they type a L with their credit card number. So I just filter all to numerics. Okay, it just saves time and hopefully one less chance for failure. Expiration month should be a 2-digit month, 01, 02, all the way up to 12. And then expiration year should be a 2-digit as well. So I always throw that in a right calculation to make sure I only grab the last two. The optional data I mentioned, you can see, you can add all kinds of stuff. All the optional parameters are listed in the documentation. This is how you code them, okay? So you send this packet of data off to Authorize.net, and it's going to spit back a result. If it's a approved transaction, you're going to get one packet of data. If it's declined, you'll get another, and I'll show you each of those. And this is all my error handling and return data for scripts. So like we can write it to a payments table or to the transaction record or whatever, because you want to keep your transaction ID in case you have to void or refund the transaction or even look it up. And you want to keep, a redacted card number and that type of thing. Pay no attention to the show custom dialogues throughout here. This is just for the demo, so I can show you the return in line without opening my data viewer and exposing my super secret private keys. So let's go run one, shall we? So let's jump out of the script space. Now we're on record 1. And you'll see charge CC, you should run on record 1 to see how it works. And so customer ID is set, the amount, we're going to do it for $1. The credit card security code, the month, the year, and this is the fake credit card number you should use. There's a 505050 up to 16 that works, I think, as well. But this is the one I always use, just because it's simple and I don't have to think about it.
Back up. So that is a test number that's set up by the credit card company. So for that purpose, is that what that is?
It's set up by Authorize.net, as far as I know, because it works with Authorize.net.
Okay, great.
Okay. And just to review, make sure you have your Authorize.net keys and your plugin keys properly put into these fields. So we hit charge credit card, and it sends all this stuff off. Do I have my credentials? It returns a 1. Yep. And it does the registration of the plugin. Do I have the plugin registered? Yep. And then it fires off the transaction, and this is what you get. Authorization code. Now this will be, some random jumble of alphanumerics when it's real. Transaction ID will be a 9 or 10 digit numeric. Response code 1 is success, approved, etc. A little message. I don't know what the P means. It's P for AVS is passed. So this is test mode. Everything is hunky-dory.
What is AVS?
Address verification system. So one of the really good reasons for passing through a street address and zip code is it says, does the billing address of this card match the numerics of the address and zip code passed? And if it does, that's one higher level of fraud protection for you or your customers. So generally, if you're doing single executables like this transaction, I recommend passing full address info just to get that extra AVS authorization. But what does it look like when it declines? Whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself. So when my script exit, this is the packet that is returned. You get a result variable that tells you success, right? All the transaction values from the response from Authorize. And I parse these appropriately and put them into my payment record or my transaction record, whatever the case may be. But that's it. This script returns this packet to you in a return delimited list. So all you have to do is get value, whatever the number is to get it. So to look at it from a decline, if you run it manually, I think. Let's go back to the script workspace. It should decline here. Credential tests, plastic test. Dang it. Let's do this. Let's go here. This'll fail. So we're going to charge CC. It won't let you because the amount and the number and everything is required, right? Now let's do this. But really quick, I'm just going to make it do a real transaction.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun. So back to record 1, and we're going to fire it. It has the credentials. Its plastic is registered. Ruh-roh. Approved. Did I not save that? How is that possible? Let's do this. I know what I did. Working with credit cards is so much fun.
Did it actually? What did it do? That's so even when you're in live mode, it's still a test.
Yeah.
With that credit card.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody that.
That card is okay.
It's the way. That's the way I have my account set because I'm lazy and I don't like doing set test mode. So I have a little setting in Authorize that I can do that with, and you do too. Everybody does. But you can see I changed it to 1, 2, 3, 4 on the back end, and it screwed up and it threw the error, right? Card number's invalid. And so it sends you back a different packet, attempted one-time charge for failed, declined, right? And all the stuff that goes with it. And so you can parse that into your payments table and you'll be able to record, I tried to charge this card 3 times and it never went through, and call your customer, put a new card number in, and off you go. So that's part of your error trapping. Okay, so let's stop here for just a moment and see what questions there are on basic credit card charges.
Well, questions from people on the question. Lynn, Michelle, Flint. Ruben asked the question of it's kind of an interesting question. He goes, well, where's the insert from URL? Right? So we're talking to a plugin that's making this work. We're not doing a direct API integration, right?
Right.
And so as a result, there's less programming, less setup. Kyle was a big fan, but Kyle's idea of a good time is with JavaScript and custom functions in JSON. So I cannot.
Yeah, you can certainly do that, but these scripts work in any file. So why keep writing the same script? That's why we do it this way.
Yeah, we like it that way.
All right, so let's go on to profiles. And so on the last video on PCI compliance, we stated that keeping payment profiles is the PCI way to store credit card data, right? That way you can keep charging the same credit card over and over as needed without storing the number. And so the way we do this is with 3 scripts. We have create payment profiles. This is a master script that calls others. So you can see we have the same parameter generation, and then we fire a script to create the profile ID. This identifies the customer to Authorize.net, and if it works, then we fire the one to create the profile payment ID. So let's look at each of those. And that's all this does. So to create the customer ID, the required things here is an ID customer. So whatever you're using as your primary key in your customer table or whatever, that's what you pass into this in this form, in that ID _ ID customer form. So we set that variable right here, and then we register just like before. We acquire our Authorize.net credentials just like before. Notice I don't have any error trapping in here though. And the reason is I copied this script directly from a live solution. And error trapping is often very particular to the live solution. And so I just deleted it for this demo. But you would need to error trap in here, okay? We turn off the plugin errors. We set test mode. Again, remove line 29 here if you want to run live. And then we set profile customer ID using the plugin function cc profile create customer. And the format for this is all in the documentation. This is not hard to do. You pass that packet and you get back a 9-digit or 10-digit number, or something that says error. You can see right here, if it's error or a question mark, you have a problem and it errors out. Otherwise, it exits with the customer ID. Same thing for profile payment ID, almost identical. Set the parameters, grab the registered plugin, grab the credentials for authorize, turn off the errors. You could do set test mode if you want, and then use the CC profile create payment function. And this is what you pass for it. Your login keys, the customer ID that you just created, the card number, and the expiration date in 4-digit format.
We should probably spend a couple minutes and kind of retread these steps here a little bit.
Okay.
Because right there, I mean, we don't want to. I mean, I already know the answer to this, so I'm kind of teeing up a ball for you to hit. But the idea with PCI is we don't want to store the credit card. Just don't do it. Yet, in order to populate that thing you just had, if you want to bring that back up, right? That little, yes. In order to populate this, we had to have a credit card number and a date. So how do you square the idea with not having it with actually also having it in here?
Well, I only keep it in variables when I'm doing this. So, or using a specific technique I'll get into on Monday, but I store it for less than 10 seconds. So ideally, like if we were using FileMaker Pro clients, we would store it in variable only. So they put it into a global and they hit go, and it grabs it out of the global and clears the global.
Okay, so let's walk through this one more time because I know people. It's like what? So the idea is that you're on a screen or you're on a web page, and you're going to collect the credit card. It says, "Give me your name and your credit card information and your code and everything else that you want to capture." And you're bringing it in either through a web page or you're in FileMaker. If you're in FileMaker or a web page, you want to take that and load that into FileMaker. Ideally, it never is saved into a record. It's never like set field into this record and then commit the record and save it. Ideally, you keep it as a variable the entire time. So it's actually
Correct.
never saved back to the server ever. And I think
Correct.
that's an important thing here, because if you never save it, then it's never there to be stored. And if it's never stored, then it can never be stolen, I guess is the idea, right? Is this making sense to everyone here? Right? I've got,
and as long as you're running SSL on your server, you got encrypted traffic between the client and the server as well. So you're safe from MIM.
MIM?
Man in the middle.
Man in the middle attack. Yeah, we haven't talked about that too much specifically. So that's why I make you do the acronyms, explain them.
It'll kind of make more sense as we go through it. Let me dump this out really quick. Yeah, in a production solution, this credit card number field and all these fields here would be globals. And so the person, types their stuff in, and as soon as they hit create or charge my card or whatever, the globals are pulled into variables and the globals are cleared. I set them to empty. And that way there's no record of them even on the client machine. And they can't be brought back even through revert, So so that's the safest way that I've found to do this. There might be some better ways, but I haven't heard of them yet. So let's kind of go through this script one more time, because I know it's kind of deep water if you've never done it. The simple thing, you have a create profiles master script. This just returns the data as necessary. It's the wrapper for the process. So we fire the script to create a profile ID. If that works, we fire the script to create a payment ID, and then we write everything to the appropriate fields. And this is where, in a production environment, we'd write it to our customer script or customer record, right? Or a related table for their payment IDs, because sometimes you can have more than one payment ID. Each individual script registers and grabs Authorize.net. This is nothing new. Set no errors, and then create the profile customer ID as I showed you using that. This, if it works, returns a 9-digit number, and it gets written to the customer record right there. And then you fire the profile ID. If that works, it gets written to the customer record right there. Otherwise, it errors and exits. So let's see it in action. So when we do this, we're going to you have to use record 2 on this, guys, if you're doing it with a sample file. We're going to take this customer data here, the credit card data, and create profile ID and customer payment IDs. So we hit it. Well, error updating data at the payment gateway. Interesting. So why is that? And sometimes you're going to get that, even in a live solution, which is kind of odd because this is a live solution. So it's going to a live Authorize.net. Oops. Live Authorize.net.
Are you in test mode or something, or what happened there?
I think on this one, I forgot for set test mode. So let's put that in really quick. I like doing it in the calculation engine just because it sets it for me. Right. Okay, so let's try it again.
Save.
All right, so we just hit our button, and there's some glitch. It should put in a number.
Well, I mean, you got time. Go chase it down.
Debugging this is difficult without exposing confidential stuff.
Oh, got it.
So,
okay.
so it does work, guys. There might be a legitimate glitch at Authorize.net. I mean, they're huge, but every once in a while they'll have a service outage. So let's try this. Maybe there's already a profile. So let's just change customer ID and see if that works. There it is. Boom. That's what it was. I'd already used it. So you can see how quick it is. It sets back that data really fast, right? So it does work. But you can only have one customer profile ID per customer ID. You can have multiple payment IDs per customer profile IDs. All right, and you can mess with those programmatically to display them, and so they can set which payment you want to use. That's how Amazon does it. You have 38 credit cards in there, and you're like, which credit card you want to use. All it's doing is displaying all your payment profiles and the redacted card number.
Hey, so real quick, we do have a question. Stu is our U.S. Navy active duty guy. I think he's attached to the silent service. He has a question. Following up on variables, is there a way to prevent full access users from viewing variables in a data viewer? So if you have a full access user, you give them the keys to the castle, right? I mean, Stu, that's the idea, right?
Correct. The only thing you could prevent casual viewing by using like DVM encode, which is a custom function to turn something into gibberish, but then you'd have to decrypt it on the back end. But that same full access user could do that in the data viewer, and
yeah,
it would keep honest people honest. It's you got to trust somebody.
Yeah, I mean literally that's like your launch keys, right? If you have an Aegis system, right, Stu? I know you don't have those on the subs, but if you had it's like literally putting the key into the Aegis and turning it to the special setting, right? And or whatever they call it these days. But it's the fully automated war setting, and that whoever has that key can really raise holy hell. So. Anyway.
Well, and to go a little further down that path, we've had long, drawn-out discussions about security with FileMaker, and the privilege set system is pretty good with the exception of full access, because under full access, you can really control what people can do at a very granular level, down to field access on a given record. So the full access people, there's not much you can do to stop them from viewing anything. And if you're in a military application, you likely will not be doing anything above probably classified on a FileMaker system for this reason. That's why they use some different protocols on military stuff, so that you have end-to-end, RSA 256 encryption or whatever standard they're using right now, to make sure that even the watchers can't see the data. Only the people that need to know. And if what was it, Stu? That was his name?
It was Stu.
If Stu wants to really dig into military development, a good friend of mine is the architect of security for the Navy and Marine Corps, and I'd be happy to put you in touch, and you can pick his brain and be dumbfounded by how much you don't know about security by talking to him. So he actually gave me the Palo Alto firewall configuration that they use for the military in terms of general security policies to lock everything down. It's like a master's level in security, for free. And so, I buy him pizza whenever he comes to town.
Oh, absolutely. Does he go out there for training out there where you're at?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does.
Oh, good man. Maybe I can meet him someday. That'd be fun. All right. Well, So I think Stu uses this stuff. I always like to talk, especially people who have, we had a lot of retired Marines and Navy and Air Force and Army people here, and I always make sure I try to give them as much free training as I can along the way. But I think Stu does this outside the Navy for his side business, right? Because he on duty, out on the boat, and then he's off duty and he's stuck on shore for however many months or days.
Okay, so once we have the profiles made, we want to be able to charge against them, right? And so for that, we're going to use this script, which is charge against profile. And you guys can use any names. I mean, the names are irrelevant. You should know that. But try to be descriptive. I mean, all too often we get into a customer's file and it'll be like test script 49, and you have no idea what it does, right? So be descriptive. So all we're doing here is, again, grabbing our authorized credentials, registering our plugin, setting test mode and no errors for the plugin, setting the gateway. This is all just like we did before. The only difference is line 33. Line 33 is where we use CC profile process payment. So we send our authorized key, our profile customer ID, our payment ID, and the amount, and then it kicks back the appropriate result. And let's see what that looks like. So you'll have to use record 3 to see this. You can see there's no credit card information here. We're going to charge $100 to this payment ID. And so we just hit it. And here we go. This is what we got. It's approved. Again, this is test mode, but if it were real, the numbers would be real. And it passed AVS. and then you get your exit packet just like before, and you parse that out for recording however you deem appropriate. So it's simple, simple, simple to use payment profiles. So I want to cover just a couple other things that we're not going to use demos for, but I want to make sure you know they exist. And that is you can use card readers with FileMaker and Authorize.net. Technically, Authorize.net is really only for card not present transactions, but they themselves provide the examples of how to parse card data when you swipe it through a basic card reader you can get for $10 on Amazon. That's in the documentation. So if you have a need to do that, you can make FileMaker do retail transactions through Authorize.net. It captures the track data, parses it, and sends it off using these same scripts. So if you need help with that, feel free to get in touch with us. Support at rcconsulting.com.
Yep. Yep. Keep going. You're good.
All right. You can do partial transactions. So a lot of times, like at a bar, I don't know how many bars use FileMaker, but it's the thing that occurred to me about partial transactions. Don't read too much into that. I'm really not a wino. You give them your credit card and you order a gin and tonic and they charge you $10. Well, they keep that open, and so the next time you order a gin and tonic, they're going to add $10 and they're going to incrementally authorize however much you're doing. And then when you close the tab, it grabs all those charges and rolls it into one transaction. That's how Authorize.works. Details is in the documentation. The parameter is parcel authorization equals true. You can void transactions as long as they're not settled. You can do credits and refunds. You can even do subscriptions. And that's a simple subscription, meaning it's either on or off. Doing tiered and variable amount subscriptions is pretty hairy, but it can be done. And again, the data and how to do it is in the documentation from 360works. That's really why we are such fans of the plugin, is because it lets you do superhero things really fast that would otherwise take either making custom functions in JavaScript or doing the raw insert from URL stuff, which would just drive me nuts and it would cost a client way too much. Whereas this, I mean, if you need a basic credit card authorization, you're talking an hour or two of development time versus 10 or 20 hours. So that's a huge time saver. And that's what I have for you today. I know it seems, like I presented a ton of info, but once you get the sample file and you start going down through it and understanding what each of those script steps does, it's plain as day. It's grab the credentials, register the plugin, execute the transaction, return the data. That's the script flow of every one of those. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was clear as mud. If you have more questions, please, like I said, hit us up at the support email address. And then for our next video on Monday, I think it is Monday, right?
Yep, Monday.
We're gonna show you how to do credit card transactions from FileMaker Go, as well as WebDirect. And as you may or may not know, WebDirect and FileMaker Go do not support plugins, and that's because iOS sandboxes everything, so it can't talk to plugin files and such. And WebDirect is a browser client, and so it's what I call a flat client. It's just a picture of whatever FileMaker sends it. It doesn't have the depth, and it cannot connect to any third-party resources because it's a browser. So we have a couple cool workarounds for that, and I'm going to show them to you. So I hope you join us.
Cool. All right. So on screen, you can't see what I've done, but I went out and found. We did a video on processing hard cards or plastic, like driver's license or credit cards, into FileMaker through a USB device. I believe I have this device. If I can get this out and get this running, do we want to do a session on that, folks? Do I have any buzzing on the idea of processing hard plastic cards with a mag stripe? Basically, mag stripe reader into FileMaker. Have you folks seen or played with that? Because I guarantee I haven't covered it in a very long time. Yes. So, is that a track 1, 2, 3? A reader 3 tracks? How much is that one?
Probably $10. They're just HIDs, so you get a text output. Yeah, $17.80.
Yeah. Okay, MSR 90. I'm going to order one of those right now to make sure. I'm going to go in my drawer and make sure I have it. But Foxy Jack says buzz. Foxy Jack says buzz. Do we have any more buzzing?
Would
Do
there
we
be
have any buzzing?
difficulty in getting a chip reader, maybe?
Well, let me talk about that a little bit. So, I'm glad you asked. That was a great segue. I forgot all about it. FileMaker has a problem, and that is that right now there, at least to my knowledge, there are no chip readers that work with FileMaker. And that's a big issue because at some point in the not too distant future, all these card issuers are going to say, all these magnetic stripe things are going away. You're using chip or what do you call it, RFID or whatever,
Yeah.
or nothing at all because of the fraud issues. And because you can clone or steal a magnetic strip in 10 seconds, but you can't clone or steal those chips very easily. And FileMaker doesn't have a way of using that because the device itself works on encryption and some unknown platform, probably Linux if I had to guess, but it has no way to talk to FileMaker. It doesn't deal in text, it deals in binary data. And so until FileMaker can interpret the binary data that's streamed back and forth, we're SOL. So if you must have a chip reader, there's other options, and that is way too deep of a subject for this video. But we can talk about it if you want to do a video on it later, Richard. But if you have specific questions, everybody listening, hit me up with an email at support@, and I'll do my best to answer it. But you won't be using FileMaker is the bottom line. Yeah, you'll probably be using some kind of web app, whatever you make.
Yeah, so. Yeah. No, it's what I'm probably going to do is we're going to probably add to the schedule on my end. We've already done this before, and I have the sample file for this, and I can go and kind of retrieve it. We were reading driver's licenses at the time, but you could read different things in. And the point is this: it's the idea of magnetic card swiping. And so we'll just kind of cover that at a basic level and show people how to do that. So if they need to do that, it makes it fun. So
the real difficulty is figuring out the right combination of text functions to parse the variable input, because different issuers use different lengths tracks and different info in it.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a pain.
The parsing's but what ends up happening is we have it wired up pretty well for, I think, California, and so that's good enough for the demo to get people going. But yeah, it's like whenever these things that they do, all they're doing is reading this magnetic data out, and it's a single block of text basically, and how it's parsed: 8 characters, 5 characters, 3 characters, first name, last name. Are you blind? Do you need glasses? Is your dog allowed to drive you because you're blind? You have a seeing eye dog, so it drives your car for you. All this stuff is in here, so when they pull you over, they swipe your card and they can write your ticket much more fast. I found that out after trying to pass. I tried to pass the Nevada Highway Patrol with a car full of firearms, and he got really pissed at me and pulled me over. But they wrote me a ticket at record speed because they swiped me, just put the thing in, signature, and they were done pretty damn quick. So yeah, it's
well. I was gonna mention the documentation here has a function where you pass the entire track data to it at Authorize.net.
Yes.
And it shows it right in here somewhere, right here. There's your track data. That's what it looks like.
Okay.
And sometimes, depending on who it is, who the issuer is, there might be some X's and some other garbage in there. But for the most part, it looks something like that, just a big long string. But you can pass the entire thing here through Authorize.net, and Authorize will parse it for you. So it's yet another reason to use a plugin in Authorize.net. So.
Yep, there you go, another reason. All right, well, I'll cut everyone loose. It's Friday. Have a good day, good weekend. Bill will be back Monday. Bill is awesome, a lot of fun. And then, of course, any relevant stupid stories along the way that makes it more exciting is always entertaining. So great. I appreciate it. Bill, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Good.
Take care.
Good job. See ya.
Bye.
guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap, stands in, throws it left for Amendola, reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10, rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.